The application works on 3 platforms: website, Android, iPhone. We will show all platforms. The application supports many languages. But unfortunately, we do not have time to record a video for each language. Therefore, the interface in all videos will be English, and we will try to translate the sound and subtitles. Note that in the application there are help buttons in many places that explain what a particular screen does. Same thing on mobile devices. Now we will talk about the travel plan. For this we created a test trip. Here is its name. This is the name of the user who is currently working here. There are 2 travelers on this trip: Traveler number 1 and Traveler number 2. Traveler number 1 created this trip, so he has administrator rights. The trip is very simple. 2 people fly from Rome and Milan and arrive in Toronto. There they rent a car, stay in a hotel, visit several places and fly back. If you open the site, the travel plan will be on the first page by default. Let's open mobile devices. The trip is, accordingly, in the trip section. We have several options for viewing the trip. The first option contains all the trip objects of both participants. That is, in our case, there will be transfers from Rome to Toronto, as well as from Milan to Toronto. The second option is a personal trip of the participant. In this case, it is traveler number 2. This is traveler number 1, this is traveler number 1, this is traveler number 2. Let's open the trip. Here we also have several options for viewing the trip. This is a full trip with all objects. This is useful to use in the planning process. This button turns on a filter that shows the trip from today. The trip started today, so we see all the objects of the trip. But if we opened this trip, for example, on March 4th, we would not see this flight. In the trip, it is more convenient to view the trip from today. There is another way to view a trip. We will talk about it a little later. This is a trip map. All these objects are clickable. You can go to the description and see what it is. Standard cell of a trip object. We see the trip object. In this case it is a flight from Rome Airport to Lisbon Airport. For a flight, we see the flight number, departure time, arrival time, and flight duration. This is the straight line distance from where we are now to this object. Traveler number 2 uses the American measurement system, so the distance is measured in miles. This is the direction, meaning this object is northeast of us. You will see these icons in many places in the app. The first icon is for tracking a flight. This flight has already arrived 3 minutes ahead of schedule. This flight has not yet departed. Everything seems to be on schedule, so far so good. The second icon is for calling an Uber taxi. Clicking this button will open the Uber app. The final destination of the trip in this case will be Fiumicino Airport in Rome. The next icon on this screen will help you copy multiple links related to this place. These are geographic coordinates, links to Google Maps, Apple Maps, and the address. You can send these links to someone outside the app. You can also use the coordinates as the endpoint of the trip for a taxi app. Typically, taxi apps understand geographic coordinates as the endpoint of the trip. The next icon is Google Navigator. If we open Google Navigator, it will set you a route from where you are now to this object. This is the weather forecast. This is the weather forecast for this place, in our case, on the day of picking up the rental car. You have graphs of various weather parameters. General description for the whole day. Breakdown by hour. This is the internal map of the app. They show the objects of your trip. This can be useful for understanding the geography of your trip and the distances between objects. All icons are clickable. You can go to the corresponding description of the object. And finally, the last icon is either Apple or Google Maps, depending on the platform. It's quite a powerful tool, so you might find something interesting there. Let's look at the trip. By default, all transfers are shown. If we are not interested in transfers now, we can remove them by clicking on this button. So, traveller number 2 left Rome and arrived in Toronto. Traveller number 2 rented a car. Traveller checked into a hotel. This is a visit to a landmark. This is another landmark. Checking out of the hotel. Returning the rental car. Departing Toronto. Arriving in Rome. This could be anything that you are not planning to visit at a specific time. For example, you can remember a beach or a restaurant near your hotel, or some landmark that you may or may not visit. In a travel plan, such objects are at the end of the list. But if you click on this button with a dog, you will see the tails of dogs. That is, these are objects whose dates of visit are not defined. By the way, please note that traveller number 1 arrives the next morning. They are flying out of different cities and we have different travel plans. Another item on the plan is documents. You can upload documents that are related to your trip. This could be a booking confirmation, airline tickets, insurance, etc. You can upload documents that are related to the entire trip. These are general trip documents. And this is a document that is specific to the hotel. Or you can upload documents that are specific to a specific property. This is a test document that is not related to the trip. We also have a description of the property for trips. We also have a description of the property. To do this, you need to click on the cell itself. In this case, it's a flight. You see a fairly extensive menu, which we won't touch on now, since we're only talking about the travel plan. That's all about the travel plan. This is the basic functionality that the app presents to you if you have planned a trip. Now we will talk about travel assistance. You can use the assistance functionality even if you have not planned anything in the app. Let's open the Where Am I menu. In it, you can search for different types of objects around the place where you are now. Of course, you need to allow the application to access your geographic coordinates for this. We do not use this information in any way except for searching. It is not saved anywhere, is not analyzed, and is not transmitted to anyone. Let's look at the cities around menu item. We see the settlements that surround us. We have a map of cities. Markers are clickable. We have the standard icons that we saw in the travel plan description. If you haven't looked at the travel plan section, find the standard travel object cell timecode. In addition to the standard ones, we have a Google icon. We can check information about this city on the internet. If we click on the cell, we will get a list of attractions in this locality. As usual, we see standard icons. In the list, we have a map of objects. Markers are clickable. Let's open the cell. We have a short description of the object. We have a button to go to the information provider's website, where you can see more information. We have a Google button. Maybe you'll find something else there. The Routes menu item. Routes will be present if you've been planning. This is a list of travel items from your travel plan, sorted by distance to them. For example, while on a trip, you can see which attractions you were planning to visit are near you. Weather here and now. And also a 14-day weather forecast. General weather parameters for today. And also a breakdown by hour. These are charts for 2 weeks. Let's look at some of the objects you can search for around you. These are attractions, excursions, pharmacies, ATMs, beaches, gas stations, and so on. Here are some of these menu items that are probably the most popular. For example, you can see what restaurants are around you. This is the same standard set of buttons, distance and direction. We can open this item and see what's inside, a short description and a link to the provider's website. We can go to the description that the provider of this information presents to us. We can also check information about this object on the internet. This is a map. The blue dot is you, the marker next to it is the object being viewed. Let's look at the standard menu of a travel object. This menu is present in the description of any travel object. You can see the weather around this object. You can see routes in relation to this object. When we checked the routes from the previous menu, from here, these were the distances around us. And this is around the object. You can open this object on Apple or Google Maps. You can search for objects of different types around this object. For example, you can search for a restaurant near your hotel while still searching for a hotel. Or now we can search for a pharmacy near this restaurant. You can see cities around this object. You can search for excursions around this place. You can open Google Street View, if it exists. You can see photos that were taken within a radius of 500 meters from this object. You can copy coordinates, map links, or an address. The home screen item. For example, you are currently searching for a restaurant, but you want to look at something in terms of travel. With this menu item, you can go to the home screen, look at something here, and then come back. Let's say you liked this restaurant and want to visit it. If you want to visit it right now, then you have a set of options to get there. But let's say you're planning to visit it tonight. To do that, you need to remember it somehow. You need to move it to selected. What gets moved to selected gets into the travel plan. We didn't set a date for visiting the restaurant, so we'll see it in the tails of the dog. You can also move selected objects that you found around this restaurant. For example, you can find a pharmacy near this restaurant. These are pharmacies not around you, but around this restaurant. The distance from the pharmacy is not from you, but from this restaurant. You can also move this pharmacy to selected. Here it is in the travel plan. Let's pay attention to this inscription. It says 2 out of 200. Why? That's because we have a filter set. We have set the types of restaurants we want to see. You can set a filter for each type of search object in the Where Am I menu. Every time you search for example, restaurants, you will be shown only these restaurants. Saved places. These are places that you would like to save temporarily. They are not included in the travel plan. For example, you arrived at the bus station. You want to go your separate ways and walk around for a couple of hours, and then return to the same place. Of course, each of you can save this place in your phone, but you can do it easier. Press the plus button. You can add some information or change the name. You can set which of your travel companions can see this. By default, everyone. You can leave a message. We don't need it now, because we're still together. Save. Now everyone has the same saved place where you're going to meet. When it's time for you to go back, you'll open Google or call an Uber and get to that place. Or, for example, you split up, walk somewhere, and you see something that might be interesting to the other travelers. You can save this place, probably write here why they need to get together, what's interesting here, and send a message in the built-in messenger. Or, for example, you get lost. Your fellow travelers are somewhere nearby, but in an unfamiliar place you can't find each other. You sit down on a bench, save a place, send a message, and wait until you are found. A saved place is not necessarily the place you are currently in. You can open Maps and select something on the map. Or you can search for it by address. You can search by free-form address. You can search by structured address. You can search by geographic coordinates. That is, you can choose an absolutely precise location, and then you will meet your friends not in the square near the monument, but in a clearly defined place. Hotel search. Let's say you are driving, it's late, you need to stop somewhere. This is your location. The date is set for today. You need to set the number of people staying. Set the currency and click Search. This form is from the hotel search. It will be discussed in the planning section, but you can search for hotels from here as well. Currency converter. You can create any number of currency converters. And convert money in both directions. You can add any number of currencies converters. Compass. It can also be useful. Remember that all iOS devices have sensors for the compass. But not all Android devices have such sensors. On some Android devices, the compass will not work. Weather. This is weather data in extended mode. Weather here now. We have already seen this. If you remember, in the travel plan you can see the weather around the travel objects at the time of your stay there. Here you can see the current weather around any travel object. For example, you want to see what the weather is like at the hotel you're arriving at in 2 days. Or, for example, what attraction around you that you wanted to visit has good weather now. The next item in the menu that can be attributed to travel support is money. This functionality can be used for personal calculations. Where did we spend such a lot of money? or the functionality can be used to recalculate money between travel participants. The first item is all the payments that are recorded in the application. The thing is that if you move something selected, then it is automatically considered that you paid for this object. Of course, if this object has a price, you have the opportunity to change who paid for it. The second item is the money that you paid. The next item is manual entry. This is manual entry of payments made before, during, and after the trip. For example, someone bought something for everyone before the trip. Or during the trip, someone paid for breakfast in a cafe for everyone. You can add explanations, amount, currency. You can also remember the place where the payment was made. And finally, a report on payments for all trip participants. We've already seen the currency converter. It's just calling the converter from another place. The last menu item is Messenger. The wish list and selected items are related to planning. We won't talk about that now. This item automatically creates a chat for all travel participants and chats with each other. You can use the messenger to communicate with each other during the trip. That's probably all about travel support. Let's talk about travel planning. Until now, we've mostly used mobile apps for demonstrations. That's because the functionality we talked about depends on a person's geographic location. But planning works on both mobile devices and the website. For variety, we'll show how planning is implemented on the website. What problems do we solve when planning? The first problem is searching for travel objects. Let's consider this using hotels as an example. All searches made by travel participants are saved along with filters and sorting. If you want to repeat a search made earlier, you simply select it in the list and click the search button. If we open the filter, we will see that only 5-star hotels are selected here. The same with sorting. That is, the request stores search parameters, filters and sorting. If there are many requests, you can remove other people's requests. This is the request of traveler number 2. This is not on the site yet, but it will be soon. If you use someone else's search, the app will make a copy of it without the filter with your name. This is traveler number 1's query. Now you see the same query, but it belongs to traveler number 2. Traveler number 1's query was not deleted, it's just a copy of your query, so it's not shown to you. If we delete this query, you'll see it again. Okay, let's move on. Let's choose a hotel. Here we see this hotel on the general map. This marker is the search center. We have a short description of this hotel. We have an offer for this hotel. The app does not have its own booking system, it is a meta search. Therefore, to book a hotel, you need to go to the website of the information provider. In this case, it is Booking. But here you can not only book a hotel. You will also find a lot of information here. We think that there is no point in adding all the information that is on the websites of the information providers that we provide. We have photos, location on the map, weather forecast for the duration of your stay, routes in relation to this hotel. We already talked about routes when we talked about travel support. If you are interested, find the link to routes in the timecodes. But we didn't open the Uber app. The thing is that these are device emulators that can't install the real app from the Apple and Google stores, respectively. Let's open Uber from the website. You can see the route from the hotel in question to the airport in Milan and the approximate cost of the trip. This can help you when planning your trip. Note that you can specify what types of objects you want to see in routes and on internal maps. The same can be seen in mobile apps. Next we see the cities around the object. If you're interested, we talked about this functionality when describing the escort. Find the cities around link in the timecodes if you want to know more. Photos. These are photos taken in a 500-meter radius around this object. And finally, actions. Search for information about this object in Google. Google Street View. Search for objects around this object. In essence, this is the same thing we talked about when we talked about the standard menu in the object description in the support section. So, we have described the solution to the search problem that our application provides. You have the search itself, as well as a number of auxiliary tools that help you make a decision. Planning problem number 2. Where to store information about found objects. Let's say we liked this hotel, but not enough to book it right away. We want to save it somehow. In general, we usually save the link to the site and, perhaps, forward it to other travelers. And we can have a dozen or more such links to, for example, hotels. Our application offers the following solution. Move, in our case, the hotel to the wish list. If you want, you can add some explanation of why you liked this object. Let's move to the wish list. This hotel. That is, now you don't have to scroll through the messenger in search of links sent to you. So the second problem is solved. All travel participants have a common list of all potential objects for booking. In this case, these are hotels, but the same scheme is used for flights, car rentals, attractions, etc. Search. Wish list. Selected. At the same time, all the possibilities for exploring the surrounding space are preserved, so that other participants of the journey can form their own opinion about the object. The third problem is the exchange of opinions. We need to somehow express our attitude to this object and not lose this information. We offer two means for this. The simplest is voting. You can vote for the travel object. This does not affect anything, but you can see how the travel participants feel about this object. The second way is discussion. For each object transferred to the wish list or selected in the built-in messenger, a separate channel is created. If you remember, we have already seen the discussion in the mobile applications in the messenger section. You can also find the discussion in the description of each object in the mobile application. And you can also find this on the website. This is the switch between wishlist and selected. This way, if you add your opinion about a travel object in the corresponding channel, it will not disappear and can be viewed later to refresh your memory. Something else. Most likely, you will use other ways to discuss objects. For example, a phone or other messengers. Pay attention to this number. This is a unique number for the object in the trip. It will never be repeated. So in a conversation you can say hotel number 17. Your interlocutor will understand exactly which hotel you mean. We have already said that our application does not have a booking system, so you can book objects either via link to the provider or yourself. Once you have booked something or selected it to visit, like a free beach, you can move it to selected. The objects transferred to selected are used to create a travel plan. Note the ability to edit the object. In addition to the obvious parameters, you can, firstly, specify who is the user of this travel object. That is, in this case, who lives in this hotel. And you can also specify who paid for it. If everyone or no one is marked, then everyone lives. If you tag participants, you will create individual plans for the travel participants. Who paid for this object will be reflected in the money section. We talked about this functionality in the support section. If you are interested, find the timecode with the name money. Something else. Let's say you have some place to stay, flight, attraction, etc., that you did not find in the search or did not even look for. It could be a campsite, or a hotel already booked, or you are staying with friends, but you want to add it to the trip. There is a manual entry for this. You can search for a place by address in free form. For example, here you can change the name of the place, the date or time of arrival and departure, etc. After adding an object, you can add its description. There is no description here right now, but you can insert something. I will insert something from another site as an example. Objects entered manually go to the wish list. We entered this object manually, so we do not have a photo. But we can insert something from photos taken within a 500-meter radius. You can do the same in the form for searching a structured address or by geographic coordinates. This is a standard search for objects by address, which is used everywhere. If you remember the saved places function, then the same search is used there. If you add a hotel, then most likely you will be able to find it by search. In this case, the description will be taken from the booking website. Unfortunately, sometimes they also have errors. Let there be a bird. It's called the red cardinal, and it lives in Ontario all year round. So, our app solves 3 problems: searching, sharing found objects, and discussing objects to make a decision. One more thing about manually entering flights. Let's say you have a flight that you've already paid for. Let's try entering it. Any flight consists of one or more segments. If a plane flies from London to Paris without landing, that's one segment. If it flies London, Paris, Paris, London, that's 2 segments. Each transfer adds a segment. You can enter either all segments, or the first and last. Add the number from your ticket and the date. This is our first segment. We can add a segment to an existing flight that doesn't exist yet, or create a new flight and add a segment to it. One flight, one segment. Let's add the second segment. We need to set the date, because on different dates the same flight number can mean different segments. We add a segment to an existing flight. 1 flight, 2 segments. We enter another segment, but this time it's a return flight. In this case, we need to create a flight again and add a segment. A flight with 1 segment. A flight with 2 segments. Our app recognizes 90% of segments, but not all. In this case, you can enter the segment manually. Settings. Inviting friends to travel. Let's say you've created a trip and want to invite friends to the trip. You can do this on the website. Or you can do this in the mobile app. Our app does not store the email addresses of its customers and does not send out mailings. Even if you sign up with a Google or Apple account, we only save the ID and avatar. Everything else, including name and email, is ignored. So you need to copy the invitation and forward it to your friends. The invitation contains brief instructions on how to connect to the application. Your friends need to follow the instructions in the invitation. Connecting another device, in case of anonymous registration. You have an anonymous account in the application. You bought a new phone and want to connect it to your account. Launch the application. Select a language. Inform that you have an anonymous account. After that, go to the device or browser that is connected to the account. Go to the menu, connect another device or browser. Here you expect to see a QR code. But our application does not require access to the camera. We considered it unnecessary to request access for one action. Therefore, you generate a code that you enter on the first device. If you don't have time, generate another one. Registering in the application. You need to select the interface language. You don't have an account yet. You need to select a registration method. You can register using your Google or Apple account. Or you can register anonymously. With registration via Google or Apple account, everything is probably clear. What about anonymous registration? Functionally, it's the same thing. With anonymous registration, you can connect other devices and browsers to your account. See the timecode for connecting another device in case of anonymous registration. The only difference is that when registering anonymously, you will always need to have at least one device or browser associated with the account. Otherwise, you will lose access to the account. Let's say we register anonymously. Invitation code. If you don't know what this is, see the inviting friends to a trip timestamp. If you have the code, after registering, you will be connected to the trip you were invited to. Next, you will be offered a default name, which you can change now or later, and the choice of measurement system. This is a message in the built-in messenger that a new participant has been added to the trip. That's all about registration. Linking an anonymous account to a social network. You can link an anonymous account to a Google or Apple account at any time. Contact the developers. This is a form to contact us. If you have any questions, comments, or error messages, please write to us. If you want someone to answer you, leave your address. It's better to leave your address so we can ask again if we don't understand something. Thank you. Have a nice trip.